Hello, and welcome to the Women Advancing Live podcast. Here you can listen to the unique stories of the women who make live events a reality. These conversations feature talented professionals such as concert photographers, VIP coordinators, tour managers, and more. I'm your host, Lisa, a live events and touring professional. I strive to help other women who aspire to work in the world of live music. In this week's episode of Women Advancing Live, I interview Lou Rochdi. She started working in the live event industry back in 2022 and has had opportunities to work on amazing productions from large-scale festivals such as Coachella to international sold-out arena tours. She has worked with the likes of Joji, Stephanie Potri, Rich Brian, and Warren Hugh, to name a few. She has worn many hats working as production coordinator, production manager, and tour manager, and just this year has been nominated for Best Production Coordinator at the Live Production Summit and the Production Futures Breakthrough Talents Award. Outside of her work in live events, she has also helped establish a nonprofit organization known as Gen Admission, which aids in providing educational resources for other aspiring music industry professionals. You can follow her over on Instagram at Lou_RHD. You can also check out her website linked in the description. Tune in to learn more about her journey working in live events. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Women Advancing Live. Today I'm joined by Lou. Hey, Lou, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. I'm super excited to get to interview you. I love all the work you've done with Gen Admission, and you're just a trailblazer in the industry, so I can't wait to hear more from you and get to hear your story. But before we get to the interview questions, I like to start off with a few quick icebreakers. And the first one I have for you is, what is something you always have to pack with you for a tour?
It's absolutely not work-related, but skincare and moisturizer. I would die without my moisturizer. You change waters, like types of waters every day. You change places all the time. You don't know where you're going to shower half the time, and I have really, really dry skin. So yeah, I feel like my moisturizer and just skincare in general is like the thing that makes me still feel like a human while on tour. And if I didn't have it, I would probably feel like absolute crap. So skincare. And then if I were to talk about any like work stuff, a flashlight, it's so important. So many of the venues that I work in, I mean, they're at night, obviously. So you can't see anything past the time where people come in the room and every light gets shut down. So a flashlight is an absolute must. And a good belt, because when you have all your credentials and your radios and everything in your pants, no matter how strong the pant is, it's gonna pull down. So a good belt, flashlight, and a good moisturizer.
Yeah, having a good belt is so important. Like, you have so many things tugging down on your pants. And yeah, if I go a day without skincare, I feel like a zombie. So I understand where you're coming from about having to moisturize every day. Okay, next question I have is, what is a song or artist you have been putting on loop at the moment?
Noah Kahan. I don't know why, but it's just been my go-to playlist. It's basically his album, and that's it. Even though I work in concerts, I go to an approximate amount of one concert per year. Like, no joke, in 2022, it was Dua Lipa. Last year, it was a French artist or a Belgian artist called Angèle. And this year, I went to Noah Kahan in London for Valentine's Day. And since I've been to that concert, I mean, I already listened to his songs beforehand, but I've been even more obsessed. It was one of my favorite concerts I've been to. It sounded amazing. The show was great. So it's basically like my playlist recently for like since 2024 started is Noah's song, and that's pretty much it.
All right. I don't think I'm too familiar with that artist. What kind of music does he do?
So how do you describe that? I would say folk music. It's very guitar oriented, like acoustic guitar oriented. And I think what really surprised me the most about his concert is that I am pretty sure, and I would love for someone from that show to confirm or deny, but I think there's not a single backing track, which nowadays is absolutely crazy to me because every artist has backing tracks. And when I say backing tracks, I don't mean like their voice being played. I mean like ambient sound and things that cannot be reproduced by a live instrument or backing vocals. Like a lot of tours these days don't have background singers. They just have the background vocals from the album being played as a backing track. And when I went to his show, I was like, where are the background vocals? I feel like I'm missing something. No, but really, it was impressive to me to go to a show where like everything felt like it was coming from the instrument on stage. So yeah, it's very folky. And he was a nominee for Best New Artist this year at the Grammys. So highly recommend checking him out.
I was going to say I'm going to have to. I love folky music, so definitely have to check him out. Last question I have is, what is your favorite concert, either you've attended or worked?
That is really hard. That is so hard because, like, especially working and touring, I admire things in concerts that are very specific. Like that Dua Lipa concert I went to in 2022 was, to me, so impressive production-wise. It looked gorgeous. Like, the video screen was beautiful, the way the stage and the things that were flying around, the huge balloons popping up. Like, it was just production-wise something that I was like wowed about, especially because arena shows tend to feel like you're less close to the artist, so it feels less intimate. It's like a little bit harder to like gather the audience and like get that energy. But that concert, I was just absolutely mind blown about production-wise. But from an emotional standpoint, I think Noah Kahan might have done it. I think it's an artist that I really, really listen to a lot. And so going to that show, going to London for that show, being with friends on Valentine's Day, it just felt so surreal. And I think, yeah, just from an emotional standpoint, I think that was my favorite concert to be at. But production-wise, I think Dua Lipa was the one that really wowed me.
Ooh, okay. I know that's like a hard question because I'm the same way. I have favorite concerts for different reasons. Like, one, I'm like, the production is so freaking cool, it blows my mind. But others I love because they're so sentimental to me.
Yeah, it's so hard. There's another concert I went to where I was like absolutely wowed when I went to it. It was the Gracie Abrams show in LA in September. It was an acoustic set, which also something that I had never done before. An acoustic set, completely different. It was in such a small venue. I think it was like 150 people. Like, when she didn't have her mic, you could still hear her voice. Absolutely unheard of. So that was also such a different vibe. And I remember going out of that concert feeling like so happy because it was such an intimate experience. Again, completely different to seeing Noah Kahan in an arena in London, you know, absolutely different vibe.
Yeah, I feel like I have to do like top 5 favorite concerts or something. Awesome. So that's it for the icebreaker questions. So I'll do the first question of the interview. For people listening who may not be familiar with you, can you please give a brief overview of who you are and your experience up until now?
So who am I? I don't even know. I still am trying to figure that one out. So I am professional-wise, I am a tour manager, production manager, and production coordinator. I've been mainly a production coordinator over the past 2 years. I started at Coachella in 2022, which absolutely surreal. I remember still thinking, like, why is that my first show? It's ridiculous. Like, especially I've never been to Coachella before. It was my first year in LA. I was like, this is just absolutely crazy. But yeah, I started about 2 years ago. I was still a student at the time. I wanted to work in touring, but I genuinely didn't think I could make it happen. So I was like interning in management companies, like indie labels. I was just going that route. But still in my heart, I was like, I really want to do touring. I just don't even know where to start. And then I got the chance to meet my current boss, who was basically like, after an hour of talking with me, was like, do you want to intern for me? And my first show is Coachella. And I was like, absolutely, I do. Which, looking back, I'm like, I don't know how that man trusted me after like an hour. That's just, in my mind, mind blown. Okay, that was delusional a little bit, but like, thank you, I'm still here now. So yeah, he hired me, or I was an intern at first, and then he has like a main artist that he works with that was about to go on tour in September of 2022. And the person that was supposed to be the production coordinator for that tour had to step down a week before the job started due to like health reasons. And so I was basically next in line, and he came to me and he was like, do you want to do this? And I was like, I am totally terrified. I didn't say that. Absolutely not. But in my head, I was absolutely terrified. I was like, I do not have the experience to do this. I don't even know what this job actually is. What is a production coordinator? ? But I was like, this is an opportunity that is once in a lifetime. Like, I've been waiting for this. So like, absolutely, I will do it. And then I just basically ended up being on that tour for a year and a half. Yeah, we finished touring December 2023. So it's been about a year and a half. So that was my main gig, production coordination. And then while we were off tour from that, we did a lot of gigs in festivals, smaller tours. And in that sense, I was more of a tour and production manager, depending. The role really varied. Started as a tour manager for smaller artists, progressed into more production heavy roles. And yeah, now I'm doing a little bit of everything. Really, really passionate about production. More of the technical side of things, I'd say, but still open to learn and do even more. But yeah, it's been a crazy year and a half, especially because the artists I started with evolved from like doing theaters with like 10 crew members to doing arenas with like 50 crew members. And that jump was absolutely, again, I was like, this is my second year of touring and all of a sudden I'm doing arenas. This sounds absolutely crazy to me, but made it through. We're still here.
That is crazy to me that you experienced so much in such a short time. Like, you were kind of thrown into the fire straight away. And obviously you're doing an amazing job because you have so many more productions under your belt. When did you, because you said you knew you wanted to tour, when did that spark in your mind that you're like, I want to work on the road and work in music?
That's a great question. Can't say that it was since I was a kid. Absolutely not. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to be an engineer. Both my parents are math teachers and professors, so it just was kind of always the path that I meant to take. And then in high school, I kind of was like, no, I'm going to do something different. And I decided to go into politics. So I went to school for economics and sociology, which completely different, absolutely different. And I think I was about to continue in that route. Like, that was kind of what was set for me at that point. And then COVID happened. And I think I'm one of these people that will say that COVID definitely changed the trajectory of my life, because it gave me time to basically pause and reflect and realize that politics is absolutely not the route that I want to take. Because at that time where COVID happened, I think the lockdown and being stuck in place, and I don't know, it really made me think. And it also was a little bit of a low point mentally for me where I wasn't really doing great. And so when you're sad, one of the things that my therapist told me to do is to try to remember the times where I was specifically happy. And when I would try to reflect on that over the past like 20 years of my life, like, when are the moments that I was the happiest? It was always revolving music. Like, music was always part of these images and these moments and times. Like, I learned classical piano from the ages of 7 to 18. And we did shows. That was my favorite part. I was in a band in high school. We played a festival. That was one of my favorite days ever. In college, I was part of student government, and we would organize these huge galas for the entire school with like thousands of people, and we would have musicians come and play. And the show was my favorite part, and being around music was my favorite part. So I think it was during that COVID time where I kind of paused and thought, okay, what were my happiest moment? I was like, yo, I need to do something with music. Obviously, like, those are my best memories ever. And so during COVID, that was the turning point. It was my last year of school. So my third year in college, because in France, bachelor is only 3 years. My third year of college kind of took a turn. And then from there, started to take more classes oriented towards music. And then I also met a great group of people, and we also founded a nonprofit about music. And so that was really the turning point. I don't think before that I ever considered it being possible to be a choice, because I mean, music in my life was mainly in a performer perspective, and I don't like to be on stage, but I loved the environment around live music, the hecticness of a festival, the backstage organization. For me, it was more of the backstage that was vibrant. And when I realized that this could be something that I could do, it was a career. People actually worked in that. I was like, okay, maybe I want to do that.
Dang, okay. I feel like it was kind of the same thing for me. Like, my love for live production came from being in theater in high school. And I love the live aspect of it, like the chaos on show day and just like you're making magic happen. Like it can be very stressful, obviously, because there's so much that goes into putting together a production, but like it's so much fun.
If you want to work in live events, you need to like stress a little bit. Like it's a very stressful job. But when you hear that crowd just like screaming, and when you go in the photography pit and you see people crying and people filming and people having all these amazing emotions, and you're like, I contributed to that. It just feels so great. So even though it's a very, very stressful job, it has a great feeling to it.
I was gonna say, because I feel like I thrive off of the stress. Like I'm a workaholic by nature. I love constantly having something to do. And I think that's part of the reason I love working live events.
I don't know, we thrive off the chaos.
Yeah. So going back, you said you got the opportunity to go on tour from the company that you were working for. And you're like, I don't know what a production coordinator does. Do you want to talk about how you prepared for your first tour? Like, did you do any research or did you get any guidance from an outside source?
So the first thing I did when I got the job was to go on Tour Management 101. I don't know if anybody remembers that resource, but absolutely amazing during COVID. There was like live classes every Monday, I think. And so I watched their class on production coordination, and that really helped highlight what the main responsibilities were. The second thing that I was really lucky about is that tour manager on the tour that I went on is also my boss. So he knew what he was in for. He knew that I did not have necessarily the experience, and so he helped guide me a little bit. But at the end of the day, it was a lot of just doing stuff to figure out what my job actually was, and then missing stuff, forgetting stuff, which forgetting isn't the right word because you can't forget something that you didn't know you should do. But it's by missing things that you realize, okay, that's my responsibility. Great. Now I will know. But yeah, overall, unfortunately, I was hired a week before the tour started. So the prep time was basically none. I had to jump into it. My first tour, there was no hotel booked, no flights booked, no nothing booked a week before the tour, which in retrospect was absolutely crazy. I've never been in that situation ever since. But the situation I was put in as a first experience was absolutely crazy. And I think I've lost so much hair on that tour, like lost hair, lost sleep. But the level of anxiety I was in was absolutely through the roof, just because I did not have that time to prep. I was kind of thrown into it last minute, and I just had to figure out what my job was right away without really knowing what it was. But yeah, now I can say that like production coordination is basically you're the right hand of both the PM and tour manager. You do not do necessarily technical things, and I say that as a very broad statement because my boss always says there are no rules in touring, and that's very much the case. Titles that are production coordination can be vastly different depending on the tour that you're on. But on the tours that I've been on, we've not really had any technical roles. We're mostly in charge of crew logistics, travel logistics, flights, hotels, ground transportation, buses. Basically, the best way to put it is I'm responsible to get the crew at the right place at the right time. And then once they're in the venue, that is more of a production manager, stage manager role where you're like, okay, this is going to be the schedule for the day. You're going to load in at this time. You're going to do this at this time, sound checks at this time. That's more of a production manager role. But my role is to make sure that everyone is at the right place at the right time. And in another sense, that everyone gets fed and has water and just feels comfortable. So it's a very hospitality and travel logistic dominating role. And communicating with people, where are we going to be, when we're going to be there, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, when I jumped into the role, I just knew that my role was to book flights and hotels, which was very limited. It's not really just that, but at the time, that's the bare minimum of what I knew. But yeah, it's stressful because you don't get a lot of these opportunities often, and you don't want to mess it up. So I think that's why I was under so much stress and anxiety, because I was like, I can't mess this up. I want to make a good impression. But at the same time, yeah, not a lot of, like, you need to be aware when you start touring that not a lot of people are going to teach you what to do. You're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, I understand because I relate to that. I say the term thrown to the wolves a lot when referring to working in live events because I feel like that's the case for a lot of people in the industry. You might have some handling in the beginning, but a lot of the times you have to figure things out by yourself, either from making mistakes or being told by someone after you miss something. Like, oh, I was supposed to do that? I didn't know.
My first few weeks, the TM would come to me and be like, why is this missing? And I'd be like, I don't know. Why is this missing? Like, is that my, okay, great, that's my job. No worries. But the thing is, like, the first time you miss something or the first time that you mess something up, like, people will be forgiving. But once you know, you can't mess it up again. And that's where there is pressure where it's like, once, okay, fair enough. Twice, questionable. 3 times, that is just not okay. But yeah, you can't know what you don't know. So you're going to have to figure it out by missing stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's something, especially early on when I was pretty new in the industry, like being a perfectionist and wanting to do a good job. I would beat myself up anytime I made mistakes. It would eat away at me. But, as more time went on, and like you said, if you miss something the first time, like, okay, you just learn from that experience and don't mess up the next time. But I used to be so hard on myself.
Yep. It is hard the first time. And I'm very much like you in that, where I want to do the best work I can do at all times. And so when someone comes to me and is like, you messed this up, I'm just, whoa. Like, internally, I'm trying to not show it because, like, you also have to learn how to control your emotions, especially in situations of high stress and of high responsibilities. Like, you can't lose it. But, like, internally, the amount of anxiety it gives me and guilt, like, I'll think about it for the next 3 days. Like, don't worry that next time I'm never going to miss this again because I'm going to think about it 3 months before it happens next time, So it's like, you also need to learn how to let things go at times, but very much relate to the whole perfectionism thing.
Yeah, being in this industry has definitely given me more of a backbone, and I can tolerate a lot more things. So talking about anxiety and mental health, have you had to find ways to alleviate any of that anxiety or negative emotions when you're on the road?
Yes, and I will say one thing, it is really hard to cry when you're on a bus or at a venue. It is really hard to find personal time. Reality is that I have cried on tour several times, especially on my first tour. Actually, I didn't really cry on the last one, so I guess that's good. But for me, externalizing a lot of anxiety and stress, and there are those days where you just kind of have to let it out. And people deal with their emotions really differently. I think there's people that start to shout a little more, raise their voice. Everyone copes differently. My way of coping is to cry sometimes. And so, yeah, my first tour, it was a little bit hard to try to find, especially when you're on a bus tour or when you don't have hotel rooms in a while, to find that private, personal time to, like, kind of let it go. However, yeah, you just cry for a little bit and then you just move on and you just have to pull it together. And I've had little stories, funny stories of people noticing I wasn't doing great, and then I was like, no, I swear, I'm just really tired. So it's like managing anxiety, managing pressure and stress, especially when you've been touring for a while and you're sleep deprived. I think the accumulation of sleep deprivation and anxiety and pressure is what makes it sometimes go overboard. And I think, again, everyone deals with their emotions in different ways. For me, that's just tearing up sometimes.
I feel like my go-to cry place is the bathroom.
Oh, girl. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I totally understand. Like, for me, I'm pretty good at hiding my emotions, just have to put on a strong face. But yeah, when I'm about to have a breakdown, I'm like, okay, I need to go for a good long cry somewhere.
Yeah. It happens, and it's, again, especially after sleep deprivation. I think that's the main issue when on tour, is that you're so sleep deprived that at some point you just can't really monitor your emotions in the way that you want to. And something that in another day wouldn't make you cry just all of a sudden feels like a little too much. But I think I'm pretty good at just like try to put that away from everyone, because it's not something that you want to put on anybody else.
Yeah, exactly. And I hate to, like, I'm the type of person where I don't really like to dump my problems or negative emotions on other people. Oh, especially during work. Like, maybe I'll save this conversation for after hours.
Exactly. But then when you tour, what is after hours? Because you're kind of on the clock all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Going on my first tour, I was the hospitality coordinator, and it didn't happen a lot, but sometimes on travel days or off days, there would be instances where I'd be out at like dinner or something, and someone is messaging me asking or needing something. So like always having to have my phone near me, staying nearby just in case, because you never know.
I think that's the main difference between technical crew and like non-technical crew, is the off time. You're never, as a hospitality person, as a coordinator, a production assistant, you're never really off the clock. Especially as a tour manager, you're never off the clock. Because like even travel days, you're still managing people. You're making people travel from a point to another. You're handling hotels. You're handling, like, it is really, really hard to be off work. I don't think I've ever felt on a day on tour completely off work, especially when you're involved in the advance process too. As a coordinator, that happens a lot, where you're advancing with venues, you're on tons of email threads and advancing with hotels. You still have to do your emails on your day off. So the actual day off isn't really a thing for people that are working in management, production, or hospitality. So I think that's also what's harder, where you're like, where is the line? I don't really think there is one. But yeah, as a coordinator, you can't really clock off.
Yeah, gotta be on call just in case something comes up. So going back, I know for your first tour, it started out as a theater tour, and months later you're doing arenas. So how was that jump for you? Like, you're going from coordinating a crew of 10 people to like 50 people.
Yeah, so we did theaters in the US in 2022. Then we did an international run in Asia, Australia, Asia again. And then we did arenas in the US. And then again, Australia and Asia. I had never been to Asia like before 2022. And all of a sudden, like I think in 2023, I spent more time in Asia than I spent in my home country, which is hilarious. But yeah, so I think the jump from theaters to arenas was way less important than the jump from no touring to touring. Like that first theater tour, like I mentioned it, but the amount of pressure and anxiety when you don't know what you're doing was way harder than jumping from 10 to 50 crew members. Because of course you have more people to deal with and there's like more people to communicate with, but it becomes much more of a repetitive job. Like you do pretty much the same thing for 10 people than you would do for 50 people. And if anything, it's just like you just duplicate emails and just change a few things here and there. But like the jump there was way less than the zero experience of touring to being on my first tour as a coordinator, which is funny because I expected it to be also. First arena that we did was Madison Square Garden. And I remember going in there expecting it to be so huge. And then I went in there and I was like, it's not as huge as I expected. I just hadn't realized that some of the venues that we had done a year prior were actually really, really big theaters. They were like baby arenas. Like we played some like hockey arenas in some universities that were like 9,000 people. And so that, like looking back, I was like the jump from that to arenas was actually less than I thought from a size perspective. But yet the amount of crew member like quadrupled and the amount of buses quadrupled or doubled and a half. I don't know. But yeah, the number of people were more important, but it was less of a jump than the no touring to touring.
Okay. Well, that's nice that it wasn't such a drastic change, just taking care of more people.
Yeah, and also the big difference when you're doing arenas is that we brought on a production assistant, and that just made everything different too. Like I, on a smaller level, and it's known, like the smaller you go, the more hats you have to wear. Whereas once we brought on a production assistant, it just made everything way more balanced in a way. So eternally grateful for our production assistant. She was amazing. And I feel like it made the workload way more bearable than when I was doing it on my own.
Yeah, that's nice having a PA to help alleviate some of those responsibilities. So what do you say are some skills that would help someone succeed as a production coordinator, production manager, TM?
Problem solving is the first one. And I would say creative problem solving. Basically, what touring has taught me and what being a coordinator has taught me is that nothing is impossible. And the answer is never no. There's always something you can do. You will be thrown in any touring position into situations that are unexpectable. Like I've had being on the flight with the entire crew and artist and being rerouted to a different city with no hotels or ground transportation, and like flights being canceled at 3 a.m. for a departure at 8 a.m. and a show at 6 p.m. Like you will be thrown into things that you just can't expect, and you just have to find solutions, and you have to be creative about it because you can't be the reason a show isn't happening, and you not being able to find solutions can't be you have to try everything you possibly can. So I think taking initiatives and being really creative in how you problem solve is the most important thing that you can do. And then when you have an issue that you really are stuck with, you can always turn to other people, obviously. But I would say don't come to other people with problems, come with solutions or a variety of solutions. And then if you need help with making a decision, then let them choose from what you've brainstormed. I think coming to other people like a production manager or tour manager and being like, okay, this is it, I don't know what to do, is never great. They have so much to deal with on their own. You need to be able to be like, listen, this is a situation. Now I have thought of doing this situation A, situation B, situation C. What do you think I should do? And sometimes they'll be like, well, why didn't you think of doing a mix of those or a situation D? And then you're like, okay, that's great, thank you. But never come with problems, always come with solutions, even if it's something that you messed up. Sometimes, one time that happened to me and I will always remember it. It was booking a hotel for the wrong nights, which with sleep deprivation sometimes happens where you don't realize that a show is actually on that day and you messed it up. But yeah, I try to problem solve as much as I could. I wouldn't want to come to the TM and be like, hey, so I don't know what to do, And then the second thing is take initiatives and don't sit around. You can't wait for people to tell you what to do. Again, everyone is so busy with their things. Everyone is doing their own thing. No one is going to actually sit down and teach you what to do because they don't really have the time to do that. So you have to be able to take initiatives and try to anticipate the needs of people too. Even if it's super simple things as a runner or as a production assistant, just being I can see that we're all absolutely tired today. We've done 3 shows in a row. Can I order a round of coffee for everyone? What do you want? What do you want? And just walking around and asking people, it's so little, but it will make a difference. And then on a higher level, obviously, anticipating needs, anticipating problems coming up, just anticipating as much as you can and taking that initiative so that you can save someone else the time if you're available.
Yeah, it's really important to try and problem solve. For me, I might not know everything, but in situations where I have to figure something out, it's just trying to come up with anything that I can think of before coming to my boss for input. Like you said, it's having to be creative. So I totally agree with that point. So I have known about you from the work you've done with Gen Admission, and I think it's such an amazing resource for those who want to pursue a career in music and starting out and trying to learn and figure out what they want to do in the music industry. So would you like to explain more about what Gen Admission is?
Absolutely. So Jet Mission is a nonprofit that started in 2021. I don't even know. I lost track of years. Yeah, I think it's 2021. It was made by a group of students that really wanted to work in music and start in music, but were really confused about how the music industry works. And we faced a lot of walls in terms of finding resources and wanting to learn, but not having the resources to learn. And so we started as this creator of resources. So we would interview music industry professionals about their job and then combine it in a very concise, creative, very graphic design oriented way on a website so that people could learn about different jobs so that they would know what they want to do when they worked in music. So that's how we started, and we did different releases. One was on the record label, one was on music production, and then management, I think. But then we kind of diverged off of that in the past few years. Our goal is basically to give people the opportunity to learn about music. And so we've also done events, online events. We've done 2 years of Camp Rock and Roll Out, which was this summer camp where we paired student with independent artists to build a marketing plan so that they would get their first experience working in music marketing and kind of work with their first artist for the first time. So that's what we've been doing for the past 2 years. But yeah, overall, the idea was just to develop resources, give resources and opportunities to people because it is really hard out there and internships are scarce and having the opportunity to prove yourself is hard. And even just understanding what you want to do is hard. So we really try to make it as easy as possible on other students. And so, yeah, we're always available. Right now, we're kind of restructuring at the moment, weirdly enough. I've actually given the main manager role to one of my good friends, Anna. She's kind of taken the lead on the organization in the past few months. And I'm really, really curious to see what they're going to come up with because I've heard a lot is in the talks. But yeah, we're still going strong. And I really recommend everyone to check out the website or the Instagram.
I love what you guys are doing. I agree that there's still not that many resources. I mean, there's definitely more nowadays and more seem to be popping up, but it still seems like the music industry feels like it's super hard to break into for a lot of people who are starting out.
I think for me, I've always loved to learn, but also I think knowledge is so important because knowledge gives confidence, and confidence is what makes you able to sell yourself and also be good at your job. Knowledge is so important. If you don't know what you're doing, people can take advantage of you more easily. If you don't know what you're doing, you're going to be less good at your job. Knowledge is such a powerful tool. And unfortunately, music education still really isn't a thing. There's not a lot of degrees that you can learn about it. Most of the jobs in touring don't have any education attached to them. And a lot of people just have to work at their venues locally and then grow from that. It's just frustrating that there's not an educational platform, an educational tool to do it yet. I know so many people are working on building stuff like that, but it still hasn't fully come to fruition. So yeah, for me, knowledge is so important.
Yep, it's super important. And I think that's a good segue into my next question is, what is some advice you would give to someone who wants to work in live events and pursue a job as a production coordinator, tour manager, production manager?
Well, the first one is network, which is so cliche, but please do it, especially if you're in college or a student or someone without experience, because it is so easy now looking back. It was so easy when I was a student and I had no experience because you would just go to people and be like, I want to have a coffee chat and ask you questions about your job and I want to learn and I want to shadow you. And it was so easy to be let in these places and talk with people doing this job. And at the end of the day, your network is who is going to hire you. So you kind of need it. And every time I talk about the music industry or especially touring with people that are not near an entertainment industry, they're like, it's so unfair that everything has to be through networking. And I'm like, yeah, but the way you have to think about it is that in touring specifically, you live so closely with an artist that you can't hire someone just like that. Like you need to be able to trust them on how to behave around an artist, have that etiquette, especially as a first job. Like once you see that they've worked with tons of different people and stuff, it's easier. But as a first thing, you need someone to be able to vouch for you and be like, you can trust that person on how to behave around artists or how to do their job, you know? So a network and having people being able to like be your reference and like recommend you for jobs is so necessary. And do it when you're starting out, because once you're already in it, it's way harder to network. And that sounds a little bit counterintuitive because you're like, well, at least you have the credentials now. But I've had this whole conversation with my friend Maya the other day about the fact that now when we reach out to people that we don't know because we think they're cool and they're doing the same job as us and we want to talk, it feels like we're selling ourselves a little bit. Like it feels way more salesy, even though that's not really what we necessarily want. Whereas when we were students, coming to people as like, I want to learn was so much more natural. So in a way, like I wish I had networked more when I was in college, because now it's like, it feels so weird. It's harder once you're already in it, I think, to just like cold email people and cold reach out. And then the second thing I would say, which is a little bit controversial in some ways with Gen Z, is be careful about what you post on social media. There has been this trend during COVID about like promoting fans and like having more fans be part of the music industry, but also mainly about taking fangirls seriously when they want to work in music. And that is like so important, especially because I do think that being a fan of music and having been in that environment for so long, you know, marketing, you know, customers better than anyone because you're the customer. Like I completely get it. However, when you look at it from a touring perspective, the most important thing for us when someone is reaching out to me to shadow or to talk or to come to a show is, can I trust you around an artist? And when I see social medias that are like full of concert photos or backstage photos a lot, or if you're reaching out to me about coming to shadow me and I see that you've been to like 3 of my artist concerts on your Instagram, it's hard. Like I'm putting also my job on the line where I'm like, if I'm letting you backstage and then you're doing something stupid. So I think a lot of people are not being careful enough with what they're portraying on social media and what they're posting on social media. I think the other thing about that is any sort of like backstage photos or stories or all of that, like the main important thing when you're in touring is privacy. Like we brief our crews with that before the tour even starts. Like you don't post your hotel rooms because we don't want people to know where the artist is staying or where you're staying because it's unsafe. You don't post about backstage things. We don't want to know what's in the green room. Like this needs to stay private. And again, like I see some people work their first show locally and then post everything that is going on behind the scenes. I'm like, I don't know if I can fully trust you. I don't know if I can fully recommend you for that job now, because like you need to be able to have that etiquette while you're touring. So I think, yeah, the 2 main things that I would say for anyone that's willing to work or wanting to work in touring is network properly and also be careful about the image that you're reflecting online. Because at the end of the day, it is important in that specific sector that we're in. It's a little bit different if you're working in labels. It's a little bit different if we're working with management. You have a very different relationship with the artist. But like put yourself in the foot of the people touring. Like you are sharing spaces with an artist constantly. Some tours you're in the bus with them. There's no privacy, no like you need to be able to be fully blindly trusted. And if you post photos all the time with everyone, and it's not going to look good.
Yeah, I'm super selective about what I post on social media when it's about work. And I think that's a really important thing to mention because there's been times I've seen people post and kind of over document, I guess you could say, like, look what cool things I'm doing at work. And I get that people get excited, but like you gotta understand with the nature of our work, we're in close proximity with the artists. You have to be really mindful about what you're going around sharing. And a common thing I see, usually this is in the cases of people who are like new to working shows and don't really know why it's a big deal, but going around and posting a pic of their working credential online, like, oh, look what show I got to work today. Like that is a big safety and security risk.
That is an absolute no. Don't do that. If you do that, you will be blacklisted. Like, security is the main important thing on tour. Just don't risk it. Even credential aside, like having people be backstage and taking pictures or filming, or like, I want to say we've had a hard time with this at Gen Admission, but when you're like in an organization that wants to promote teaching and educating and giving them opportunities to learn, I wanted to do so many videos of like, this is a day in my life as a production coordinator, and like make little TikToks about it. But every time I've just ended up never doing it, because it's just so hard to like draw the line. It's like, is it okay for me to even show this? Like, even if it's just my desk today, like, do I want to do that? Do I want to, like, everything that especially has like an image component to it, you're like, this just feels like too much, and I don't want to be discredited in my job, and so I'm just going to not do it. And it's a hard line because, like, yeah, in Gen Admission specifically, like, we wanted to like teach and be the most open we could, but at the same time, like, you need to be protective of your job and your reputation. So like, it just never ended up working out.
Yeah, no, I totally understand, because I can't distinguish the lines sometimes either, like even over the smallest thing. So I'm like, if I'm not sure if this is okay to post, then I'm not going to post it. But yeah, I have met people like tour managers or other people who hire crews for tours that they have told me like, yeah, I'm not going to hire this specific person because they posted this on social media. So yeah, got to be super careful what you post online.
Yeah, be very careful. Your image counts. Yeah, it depends. Again, depends on the job that you want to do. But if specifically you want to work in touring, just don't do it. Like, be selective, be safe. Just try to think about how other people will see you. Because I've known certain artists that the first thing, or certain managers, that the first thing that they do when they want to hire someone is check their socials and their online presence. When I receive an email from someone wanting to shadow me on a day, like for a certain day on tour, the first thing I'm doing is looking them up online. And if there's one thing that just makes me like, I'm not sure about that, all of a sudden you just lose that opportunity. So yeah, be very careful about your online presence.
Words to live by. Okay, well, I want to thank you, Lou, again for coming on here today to talk about you and your journey and all the wisdom you shared with us today. It was a great conversation and I enjoyed it so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I've had such a great time, and yeah.
Well, have a good rest of your day, Lou. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Women Advancing Live. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to rate the podcast and give us a follow. You can also follow us over on Instagram at Women Advancing Live to stay updated with all news and content. You can head over to Instagram to connect with Lou at Lou_RHC. You can also check out her website that's linked in the description. That's it for today. See you down the road.